Egypt's Badr Abdelati discusses regional challenges and opportunities at the Rome Mediterranean Dialogues Forum. Netanyahu reportedly gives preliminary approval for an imminent Lebanon ceasefire agreement. And the UK's David Lammy says a legal process will follow if Netanyahu visits Britain. It's 4 p.m. Cairo local time, and you're now watching Qnews. We begin today's bulletin with the Rome Mediterranean Dialogues Forum. Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati has highlighted shared challenges and opportunities in the region during his participation in the opening of the 10th Rome Mediterranean Dialogues Forum. Abdelati called for a ceasefire in Gaza and Lebanon, unimpeded humanitarian aid, and progress towards the two-state solution. He also emphasized that leveraging the Mediterranean's economic and energy potential, addressing illegal migration, and resolving Red Sea tensions. Additionally, he announced that Egypt will host a humanitarian conference on December the 2nd. Lebanon has condemned an attack on a United Nations interim force base in the south that left 4 Italian peacekeepers with minor injuries. Speaking at the Rome Mediterranean Dialogues Forum, the Lebanese caretaker foreign minister Abdullah Abu Habib called on all parties to guarantee the safety of peacekeeping forces. Jordanian Foreign Minister Ayman al-Safadi has stressed the need for lasting peace to stabilize the region, expressing hope for a ceasefire in Lebanon. On the sidelines of the Rome Mediterranean Dialogues Forum, he pledged more humanitarian aid to Gaza, support for Palestinian statehood, and the two-state solution. Safadi also called for political solutions to Syria's crisis and noted Jordan's high refugee burden, reaffirming Jordan's commitment to regional peace initiatives. Secretary General of the Arab League Ahmed Abulghait has criticized Israel's efforts to achieve the impossible and return to a pre-October 7th situation, highlighting Israel's violent wars on Gaza and Lebanon, disregarding humanitarian values. That came during his speech at the Rome Mediterranean Dialogues Forum, where he expressed concerns about the future of coexistence among peoples in the region. Abulghait also condemned Israel's ongoing aggression in the West Bank, including daily raids, land seizures, and administrative arrests, and its occupation of 82% of historic Palestine, seeking to control the remaining 18% under the guise of self-defense. Egypt's Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati has met with his Lebanese counterpart Abdullah Abu Habib at the Rome Mediterranean Dialogues Forum. They discussed Lebanon's current situation and efforts for a ceasefire. Abdelati reaffirmed Egypt's support for Lebanon's situations, including the army, and highlighted the recent aid shipment. Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati has emphasized efforts to enhance food security through the National Food and Nutrition Strategy 2022-2030 and proposed hosting a global grain hub. During a meeting with FAO Director General Ku Donju at the Rome Mediterranean Dialogues Forum, Abdelati voiced concerns about global hunger, regional crises, and Gaza's humanitarian challenges. The Egyptian Foreign Minister also highlighted Egypt's aid efforts, hosting over 9 million refugees, praised FAO initiatives, and reaffirmed commitment to collaboration with UN agencies on regional crises. Now we move to the latest developments in Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Israeli media have reported that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has given preliminary approval to a ceasefire agreement in Lebanon, with a deal reportedly imminent. Meanwhile, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz met with U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Middle Eastern Affairs Dan Shapiro to discuss efforts to secure the ceasefire. Israeli media speculates that an agreement could be reached this week, though disagreements remain over implementation mechanisms and Hezbollah's positions. Israeli sources have revealed that Israeli Minister of National Security Itamar Ben-Gvir opposes a ceasefire agreement in Lebanon. Ben-Gvir stated that such an agreement would be a significant mistake, arguing that it would squander a historic opportunity to eliminate Hezbollah, according to his remarks. And for more analysis, we now move to Hani in our newsroom. To you, Hani.
Thank you, Hela. For further analysis on the potential ceasefire agreement in Lebanon, we're joined from Beirut by the political researcher, Dr. Iman Choueir. Welcome to Qnews, Dr. Choueir. Let me ask you, how significant is Prime Minister Netanyahu's preliminary approval of the ceasefire deal in Lebanon, and what does it indicate about Israel's strategy moving forward?
All the viewers, of course, the indicators say there is somehow positive indicators, but we will know from the results, because if we are seriously facing the last 25 minutes, so the situation on the ground, whatever in the ground operation or in the air raids happening inside Beirut, is giving us negative indicators and refer that we will face more escalation from both sides, from Hezbollah and from Israel. So maybe this somehow a maneuver, as we used from Netanyahu in order to gain more time, especially that the current situation in the region right now is so close and would include the Russian rule in this battle in order to ensure non-exporting of the weapons.
Well, given the reported disagreements over the implementation mechanism and Hezbollah's positions, how likely is it that a final agreement will be reached soon? We apologize for the technical difficulties, but now we'll go back to the studio with Hela. Hela, over to you.
Thank you very much, Hani. Lebanon's displacement crisis deepens as nearly 1.9 million people are forced from their homes due to Israel's war on Lebanon.
The number of displaced individuals in Lebanon has risen sharply to nearly 1.9 million since October, according to a report by Lebanon's Council of Ministers. This surge reflects the escalating impact of the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hezbollah, which has significantly affected civilian populations and infrastructure across the country. The Council's report highlights the unprecedented scale of displacement in recent years, with families fleeing violence and seeking refuge in overcrowded shelters or makeshift accommodations. The displacement crisis is straining Lebanon's economy as the country grapples with limited resources to address the needs of those affected. The Israeli aggression in Lebanon has led to repeated cross-border attacks, further destabilizing southern Lebanon and forcing thousands to abandon their homes. Humanitarian organizations have warned of a worsening situation if hostilities continue, calling for urgent international intervention to support relief efforts and ensure the safety of civilians. The latest figures underscore the far-reaching consequences of the conflict, as Lebanon faces mounting challenges in providing aid and shelter for its displaced population. The report serves as a stark reminder of the urgent need for escalation and a coordinated response to address the growing humanitarian crisis.
Israeli airstrikes have hit Beirut's southern suburbs, leaving buildings damaged and debris scattered. This came after a powerful Israeli airstrike that killed at least 29 people in central Beirut the day before. The two-week escalation coincides with the U.S.-led ceasefire talks. Israel has intensified airstrikes on Lebanon since September, escalating tensions following the war on Gaza. The Lebanese Health Ministry has announced that the death toll from Israeli attacks on Lebanon climbed to over 3,700 and over 15,600 wounded since October the 8th of last year. That came as the Israeli occupation raids resulted in at least 84 deaths and 213 injuries over the past 24 hours. Earlier, Israeli strikes targeted a Lebanese army post in southern Lebanon, resulting in the killing of one Lebanese army soldier, while 18 others were injured. The Arab League has held an emergency meeting in Cairo condemning Israel's threats to extend military operations into Iraq and urging the international community to halt Israel's aggressive policies. The Arab League expressed support for Iraq and condemned Israel's actions in Palestine, Lebanon, and Syria, as well as its hostility towards UN agencies. The Arab League also criticized the U.S. for blocking Gaza ceasefire resolutions at the UN Security Council. And now we move to the latest developments in Gaza. The Gaza-based health authorities have announced that the death toll from Israeli on the Gaza Strip climbed to over 44,200 and over 104,500 wounded. The medical reports said that the Israeli occupation forces operations in Gaza have caused 35 deaths and 94 injuries in the last 24 hours. That came as 4 other people were killed and several others injured in an Israeli attack on a building in the Zaporizhzhia refugee camp in central Gaza. Palestinian medical sources have reported that 5 people were killed and several others injured in an Israeli airstrike targeting a gathering of civilians in Jabalia, north of Gaza. 2 more Palestinians lost their lives and others were injured in a strike near the Indonesian hospital in northern Gaza. Israeli artillery also shelled displaced people in Al-Manshiyah neighborhood in areas surrounding shelters in Beit Lahia, as well as Tal al-Zatar in the Jabalia refugee camp. Israeli occupation forces have bombed a house in the Palestinian city of Rafah, resulting in 4 fatalities and several injuries in central Gaza. Paramedics from the Red Crescent transported 5 injured civilians to Al-Auda hospital in Nusayrat camp following an artillery strike on residential areas. Meanwhile, Palestinian media reported that the occupation forces demolished residential buildings in the Twin Towers area northwest of the Gaza city. British Foreign Secretary David Lammy has stated that the UK would follow dual legal process if Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visits the country. Speaking at a G7 meeting in Rome, Lammy responded to questions about whether London would enforce the ICC's arrest warrant against Netanyahu. He affirmed that the UK is a signatory to the Rome Statute and adherence to the obligations under the international and humanitarian law, adding, should such a visit occur, there would be a judicial process and the relevant due legal procedures would be followed.
Under international law and international humanitarian law, of course.
And now we move to the latest developments of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Russia has launched massive drone attack on Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia Oblast overnight. The Russian forces also targeted energy infrastructure in Mykolaiv in southern Ukraine. The governor of Mykolaiv Oblast reported that power was restored in most areas by morning. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky noted that Russia deployed around 460 drones and over 20 missiles in attacks throughout the past week. Russia has said that its forces attacked targets in Ukraine, including equipment assembly points and military airposts, while Ukraine reported that its troops prevented a Russian breakthrough in Ukrainian defenses. Russia's defense ministry reported that targeting 141 regions included drone production sites and storage points, and also downed 44 Ukrainian drones. Meanwhile, Ukraine's general staff reported 122 battles along the front lines, particularly near Kharkov and Pokrovsk, as tensions remain high in eastern Ukraine. Ukrainian officials have reported that a Russian missile strike on Kharkiv in Ukraine has injured 23 people. The strike also damaged over 40 buildings, including an administrative center. And Russia continues launching nightly missile attacks on Ukrainian sites. Of 145 drones deployed, Ukraine claimed to have downed 71. 71 more lost to electronic warfare. The Kremlin has stated that President-elect Donald Trump's circle spoke of peace in Ukraine, as opposed to President Joe Biden's outgoing administration. The Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov reiterated President Putin's readiness for dialogue. Trump's nominee for National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, expressed concerns over escalating conflict between Russia and Ukraine, emphasizing the need to bring the war to a responsible end. In economic news, the global stock markets rose during early trading, with European and Asian indices tracking gains from Wall Street as investors welcomed President-elect Donald Trump's nomination of billionaire Scott Bessent as Treasury Secretary, viewing it as a market-friendly choice. In Europe, Germany's DAX climbed 0.7%, while France's CAC 40 advanced 0.9%. The UK's FTSE 100 rose 0.4%. The US futures pointed to further gains, with the S&P 500 futures up 0.4% and Dow Jones Industrial Average futures gaining 0.6%. In Asia, Tokyo's Nikkei 225 led the gains, rising 1.3%, while South Korea's Kospi matched that with a 1.3% increase. Oil prices steadied on Monday early trading hours following 6% gains last week, with mounting tensions between Western powers and major oil producers, Russia and Iran, raising fears of supply disruptions and keeping a floor under prices. The Brent crude futures were down 0.34% to $74.91 a barrel. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures fell 0.49% at $70.89 per barrel. Gold prices declined 1% on Monday's early trading as investors booked profits following a 5-session rally to a 3-week high, while the announcement of fund manager Scott Bessent as the new U.S. Treasury Secretary tempered safe haven buying. The spot gold was down 1% and $686.73 per ounce. U.S. gold futures shed 0.9% to $2,688.40. Australia's most decorated Olympian, Emma McKeon, has announced her retirement from swimming, ending a remarkable career. The 30-year-old sprinter, who won 14 Olympic medals across 3 games and 20 at World Championships, made the announcement on Monday, November 25th. McKeon had hinted at her retirement earlier this year during the Paris Olympics, where she secured gold, silver and bronze medals in early events, contributing to Australia's most successful summer games to date. South Africa's Pieter-Stephen du Toit has been named Rugby's World Player of the Year for the second time at a ceremony in Monaco. England's Illy Kudun won the women's title, while Antoine Dupont and Madison Levy claimed honors in the sevens categories. Du Toit, who previously won in 2019, joins New Zealand greats Dan Carter, Richie McCaw and Boden Barrett as a 2-time recipient of the award. He also becomes the 3rd South African to earn the accolade, following Chuck Berger and Brian Habana. The flanker played a pivotal role in helping South Africa secure its first rugby championship title in 5 years and achieve clean sweep of victories against Scotland, England and Wales in the autumn series. And that brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here is what we have been covering. Egypt's Badr Abdelati discusses regional challenges and opportunities at the Rome Mediterranean Dialogues Forum. Netanyahu reportedly gives preliminary approval for an imminent Lebanon ceasefire agreement. And UK's David Lammy says a legal process will follow if Netanyahu visits Britain. And this concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Qnews EG to stay informed. Thank you very much for watching and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.